Hare Krishna devotees. Welcome to the program, Srimad Bhagavatam and attentive japa. So I think we'll make a start. Thank you so much. We'll do a quick prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So today we're talking about King Yayati regains his youth. A very interesting topic. It's to do with sense enjoyment as well. We've been discussing sense enjoyment for the past few weeks now. Even the Sunday class, which I was giving last week Sunday, that was also on sense enjoyment. And so this is sort of a continuation of that. And previously we were saying that the pleasures of sense enjoyment keep us in the bodily concept of life. Now this is the perils of sense gratification. They keep us in the body concept of life, which binds us to the material world, and we keep returning again and again to enjoy or to suffer our desires instead of returning back home, back to Godhead, which is our real home in the spiritual world. So if you have material desires, this is a place to be. This material world is the department of desires. But if you want to go back, then you have to stop doing karma. You have to stop having material desires. So the pleasures of uh, these desires, the pleasures arise from contact between the senses and the objects, and these are sources of our suffering as well, as we were saying. And if you are enjoying something, then you have to also suffer the consequences. This is the balance of pleasure and pain. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that whatever is giving you pleasure in the future will be the source of your misery as well. And then because we want more and more pleasure, we become sinful, and then we suffer our sins, and this is the low karma. And plus, because we are not purifying our senses from material contamination, therefore we don't get any taste in bhakti. So that was what we discussed before. Now, following on from that, so this is the story of King Yayati, son of King Nahush. King Nahush, the father of Yayati, actually this sort of continues in the family. King Nahush, he molested Lord Indra's wife, Shachi, who then complained to Agastya Muni and other Brahmins, and these saintly Brahmins, cursed Nahush to fall from the heavenly planets and be degraded to the status of a python. So consequently, Yayati became King Yayati. He had an older brother called Yati, but Yati only seeing what happened with his father. How power can get you ahead, and you think you can do whatever you like, and you get so engrossed in sense gratification. So Yati, he refused to become or to take the post of the king. So therefore, Yati became king, and it's mentioned actually in Srimad Bhagavatam that when one enters the post of a king or head of the government, one cannot understand the meaning of self-realization. Knowing this, Yati, the elder son of Nahush, didn't accept the power to rule, although he was offered by his father. Now, actually, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that self-realization is the prime objective of human civilization, and it is regarded seriously by those who are situated in the mode of goodness and have developed the Brahmanical qualities, which means that's where you need to be to get self-realization. You need to be, you have Brahmanical qualities, and you need to be in the mode of goodness, and self-realization should be the aim of our life. But in the case of Kshatriyas, the kings are generally endowed with material qualities conducive to gaining material wealth and enjoying sense gratification. And but those who are spiritual ones are not interested in this material opulence or sense gratification. So this is a thing to remember. and indeed they accept only the bare necessities for a life or spiritual life advancement. And it is specifically mentioned here that if one enters political life, especially in the modern day, one loses a chance for human perfection. Nonetheless, this hearing is described as Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Well, this is what we should be doing. One hears Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure devotee, that should be our aim. And for example, Maharaj Parikshit, he was involved in politics, he was a king, but because at the end of his life he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadev Goswami, he attained perfection very easily. So we should be hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, it purifies us, helps us purify, and break the chains of material gratification, sense gratification. Now, King Yati, so in this story, King Yati, you find that sense pleasure got him into a lot of trouble. And King Yati, actually, he was from the lineage of sage Atri. So he's coming down from descending from there. And his descendants include the Yadu Vansh of Lord Krishna. So, get a picture of uh, his uh, his family, so which he belongs. And King Yati was, in this case, just like his father, was very much inclined to lusty desires, and even had a child by his wife's maid servant. And his wife's name was Devyani. And when she found out, she was very angry and returned to her father's house, who was Shukracharya. We all know Shukracharya is spiritual master of the Asuras, and Shukracharya, he possessed great mystic powers. And when he saw Yati tagging along pathetically after Devyani as she left home, he followed her. Shukracharya was very angry because he had actually already told him that this maid servant, who was very close friend of Devyani, Shukracharya had told Yati at the time of marriage that don't get involved. I don't want you to get involved in this maid servant ever. I mean, she was very good looking, and there's another story about that. And so he didn't, his senses got better of him, and he had a child with her. And so Shukracharya, he cursed King Yati to become an old man, straight, immediately become an old man. But since he was still his son-in-law, he also gave him a way out. He said, you may get back to your youth if you find someone who will agree to take your old age and transfer his youth to you. So King Yati wanted desperately to regain his youth because he still had a lot of propensity to enjoy, and now he become very old. So he was looking for someone he could take the youth from, as Shukracharya mentioned, so he could enjoy many more years of indulgence in sense gratification. So what does he do? He goes to his eldest son Yadu and asked him to make the trade of youth for old age. You know, so that's why he was so blinded by sense gratification that he was willing to take the youth of his children, so he could have enjoy. Never mind, his child becomes old before his time. He just wanted to enjoy, and he was happy to trade his old age with his young son. So it's quite disappointing. But Yadu replied, Father, I don't welcome your old age and invalidity now, for unless I properly fulfill my material desires in my youth, I will not be ready to devote myself fully to spiritual life in later years. So Yadu was looking forward to spiritual life, but he was very young. He wanted to enjoy, but that was his aim, that I will go into spiritual life as soon as I get over with this. So Yadu again says, My dear father, you have already achieved old age, although you also were a young man. But I don't welcome your old age and validity, for unless one enjoys material happiness, one cannot attain renunciation. And this, I think, is true for many of us, especially nowadays. We want to have enjoyment, and then when we feel that maybe now we can join, I mean, I'm typical case sitting right here in front of you, that I realize that I think enough is enough, and we need to change. It's time for change, and hence we are here doing the right thing. So renunciation of material enjoyment is the ultimate goal of human life. So he's referring to the one ashram dharma, the most scientific process. It aims at giving one facility to return back home, as Prabhupada mentioned, back to Godhead, which one cannot do without completely renouncing all connections with material world. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, one who wants to go back home, back to Godhead, must be nishkinchana, free from all affinity for material enjoyment. So unless one is fully renounced, one cannot engage in devotion service or stay in Brahman. Devotion service rendered on the Brahman platform, like mode of goodness and mode of pure goodness. Therefore, unless one attains the Brahman platform or the spiritual platform, one cannot engage in devotion service, or in other words, a person engaged in devotion service already on the Brahman platform. Because Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, verse 14.26, Mamchayo Vaibhyacharena Bhakti Yagona Sevate Saguna Samitiyetan Brahma Huya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who doesn't fall down in any circumstances, at once transcends the mode of material nature and thus becomes to the level of Brahman. So if one attains devotional service, therefore is certainly liberated. So that's where what we are working at, and generally, unless one enjoys material happiness, one cannot attain renunciation. One ashma dharma therefore gives the opportunity for gradual elevation. So Yadu, the son of Maharaj Yayati, explained that he was unable to give up his youth because he was following one ashma dharma. Right? He wanted to go through that process, for he wanted to use it to attain the renounced order in the future. So this is a method for Grastas to be completely give up sense gratification later on in life, at least. I mean, you can live life as a brahmacharya from day one if you want, but those who want to enjoy, actually, this is what he's saying, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow these these stages. There are brahmacharis, who are brahmachari from day one, and they don't get married; they stay brahmacharis throughout their life. And but if you have the propensity to enjoy with a partner, then that's what the marriage is for. So you can get married, but then after age of 50, it's mentioned by Ashram Dharma, then you should give up these things and become a one person in mentally anyway. Right. So well, in today's society, people want to indulge in self gratification till the last breath. Now, this is the difference. Nobody's following the Varnashma Dharma nowadays, but before, in the previous yugas, early Kali Yuga, maybe people were following. The other brothers also refused to follow their father's order. When the brothers of Maharaj Yadu refused their father's order, this was certainly irreligious because they were not aware of principles of religion. They weren't following any Varnashma Dharma. They just were not interested. So look, you are you and we are we. It's our life, and we don't want any involvement in your sense gratification. That's you sort that out yourself. It's your problem. So Maharaj Yadu, he was completely aware of the principle of religion. So this part is very important because the ultimate principle of religion is to engage oneself in devotional service to the Lord. So Maharaj Yadu was very eager to engage himself in the Lord's service, but there was an impediment during youth. The material desire to enjoy is certainly present and very strong. So he wanted to fully satisfy these lusty desires in youth, and there's a chance of one becoming disturbed in rendering service to the Lord if you haven't, if you have desires, that is, if you have desires, if you have lusty desires, then get rid of them in youth, and then then they don't become a problem to you later in life. This is what he's saying, that if you have any desires, enjoy them in your young age, and then you can peacefully concentrate on Lord Krishna later on in life. So Sripad mentioned that we have actually seen that many sannyasis who accept sannyas prematurely, not having satisfied their material desires, fall down because they are disturbed. Therefore, the general process is to go through grasta life and one prastha life, and finally to come to sannyas and devote oneself completely to the service of the of the Lord. So, excuse me a minute. So, we were talking about that you can break a lower dharma for a higher dharma, as we were talking about primary and secondary a couple of weeks back. So he was like, uh, Yadu, he was like the four Kumaras who refused the order of their father, Brahma, for the sake of a better cause. So secondary, primary. So for a primary cause, you can break your dharma of obeying your father, which is our dharma to obey our parents. But for a bigger cause, you can disobey them. And because the four Kumaras wanted to engage themselves completely in the service of the Lord as brahmacharis, so they refused to obey the father. He wanted them to get married. Lord Brahma wanted them to get married, so they refused. And same here with King Yayati, rather his son Yadu, that he didn't want to get involved because his aim was to do bhakti later in life, and he had some interest in sense gratification, which he wanted to purify at this stage. So then King Yati approached Puru, his youngest son. Now Puru replied, "O your majesty, who in this world can repay his debt to his father?" So he had no sense gratification desires, no propensity for that. By the mercy of one's father, one gets his human body instead of an animal body. Thus, one gets the chance to become a devotee of Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So Puri was more than pleased to accept his father's old age. So King Yati took his son's youth and began to enjoy life once again. There you go. And he became emperor of the entire world and enjoyed as much material happiness as he desired. Especially enjoyed the company of his young, beautiful wife, Devyani. So he enjoyed actually for 1,000 years. And then finally it struck him one day, came to his senses. The cloud of illusion lifted. It's like it says in Srimad Bhagavatam, as supplying butter to a fire doesn't diminish the fire, but instead increases it more and more. The endeavor to stop lusty desires by continual enjoyment can never be successful. In fact, one must voluntarily cease from material desires. So although Maharaj Yati was the king of the entire world, and he engaged his mind and five senses in enjoying material possessions for 1,000 years, he was unable to be satisfied. So he realized that it's been 1,000 years I'm in fulfilling these desires, but they don't seem to go away. So what do I need to do? So I have spent the full 1,000 years enjoying sense gratification, yet my desires to enjoy such pleasure increase daily. So, just doesn't necessarily, if you have a lot of propensity, then just by enjoying doesn't necessarily mean they will go away because you don't have a aim of, like Yadu did. He had an aim that I will enjoy and then I will go into bhakti. He had a goal, he had a target, he had a plan. If you don't have a plan and you just want to enjoy, then it will never go away. You'll be enjoying to the last breath. You want sense gratification. But so, if you must enjoy, then at least have a plan that I want to give it up and then I want to get to bhakti because that is the true aim of life. So Maharaj Yati is explaining in terms of actual experience how strong lusty desires are, even in old age. Finally became completely disgusted. He became completely disgusted with sense pleasures and everything connected with it. Power, prestige, wealth, and so forth. So one day he told Devyani, "Oh my dear wife with beautiful eyebrows," this is what he said in Srimad Bhagavatam, "Oh my dear wife with beautiful eyebrows, I am so poor in intelligence that I am no better than a lusty goat. I was bewildered by your beauty and forgot my real task of realizing my eternal spiritual identity. I never succeeded in satisfying my lusty desires, no matter how much so-called enjoyment I had. Pouring butter on a fire does not put the fire out. It blazes higher and higher. Lusty desires are difficult to give up, but I must and will learn to give them up. For years I have tried in vain to satisfy my desires, but now I shall give them all up. I will go alone to the forest and meditate upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. So he came to his senses and he remembered what the goal is, and he started working on that. And having given up all his lusty desires and having inspired Devyani to give hers up also, King Yayati called for his son Puru, returned Puru's youth, and took back his old age. Wow. And then, although Puru was the younger than all his brothers, Yayati enthroned him as emperor of the world. He certainly earned it. The king and his wife Devyani had enjoyed sense pleasure to the fullest extent, but now they gave it all up in an instant. So this is very interesting. After thousands of years of enjoyment, which was actually increasing, then King Yayati and his wife, they just gave it up with a, you know, with a blink of an eye. So at last, King Yayati and Devyani became great devotees of Lord Krishna. So Sri Prabhupada mentioned that the Kad Indriya or unpurified senses can be purified if one engages the senses and the mind in Krishna consciousness. So when soon as they became interested in worshiping Krishna, they could give up straight away. You know, Lord is there, he helps you. You can give up straight away if you are sincere. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tat pratavena nirmalam. So one must be freed from all designations. When one identifies himself with the material world, his senses are impure. But when one achieves spiritual, Haribol? But when one achieves spiritual realization, Haribol, bro? Okay. So, but when one achieves spiritual realization and identifies himself as servant of the Lord, his senses are purified immediately. So that's the way. So engagement of the purified senses in the service of the Lord is called Bhakti. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevnam Bhakti Uchate. So one may enjoy the senses for many thousand years, but unless one purifies senses, one cannot be happy. So eternal happiness, this is what we need to do. And having enjoyed sense gratification for many, many years, King Parikshit, this is King Parikshit telling this is Shukdev Goswami telling King Parikshit in Srimad Bhagavatam that having enjoyed sense gratification for many, many years, O King Parikshit, Yayati was accustomed to it, but he gave it up entirely in a moment. Just as a bird flies away from the nest as soon as its wings are grown. So that Maharaji Yayati was immediately liberated from the bondage of conditioned life. Is certainly astonishing, isn't it? 1,000 years and then suddenly giving up. But Sri Prabhupada gives example, a very nice example that like a tiny baby bird, dependent fully on its father and mother, even to eat, suddenly flies away from the nest when its wings have grown. Similarly, if one fully surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is immediately liberated from the bondage of conditioned life, as promised by the Lord Himself. Aham tvam sarva papibhyo mokshyami ma shucha. So, because King Yati completely surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, he was freed from all contamination of material modes of nature, and because of his self-realization, he was able to fix his mind upon the transcendence Power Brahman, Vasudev, and thus he ultimately achieved the position of an associate of the Lord. So, what a transformation for him and his wife. 1 minute for 1,000 years he can't stop sense gratification. As soon as the cloud of illusion lifts from his head, from his mind, he's worshipping Lord Krishna and totally dedicated, and then he becomes the associate of the Lord. He probably was already eternal associate, but these are pastimes to teach us a lesson that about this Maya. Even Lord Brahma taught us this lesson that lusty desires are very, very strong, and who are we? We are just mere mortals. Human beings, and we can get caught out and lose our the main goal, main purpose in life. So I think it's a very interesting lesson. So I want to hear any interesting thing that you found in this, or any realizations you get from this. Achyuta Prabhu, shall we start with you, Prabhu? Anything that you found interesting or you would like to add to this? Haribo Prabhu, is there? Okay. Uh, let's try Venkat Satya Parth Prabhu. Haribo Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, sorry, I just joined Prabhu, sorry for that.
Okay, okay, no, okay. Okay, we'll ask Pratush Prabhu. Pratush Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanna Pranam.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, Hari Bol, how are you? So, Dhanna Pranam to all. And this is a difficult topic for all of us to realize, and I'm really happy for those fortunate ones in ours, like yourself and many who have actually overcome or trying mostly overcome the tendency of sense enjoyment, and then dedicating more and more time to devotion service. But I realized that my life is like a sine wave, which goes up and then again goes down to the bottom, and then again try to go up, and then again go down to. So I'm going through that phase, and basically most I don't know about most of us, but I'm hoping that the total altitude a sine wave is having is going to be more and more stable and coming in line with less of the downward waves, and then again come to the wave where it's mostly high, because we need to be stable in bhakti, and somehow we we have our prarabdha and desires to enjoy, and then that actually affects our sadhana bhakti. And one can immediately, Krishna is so merciful that at least by the grace of Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj, that he can immediately let us know that something is happening wrong, and we immediately realize in our sadhana that something is wrong, and then we improve, and then it again goes down basically. So we need to be firm in our realization, uh, and then keep on practicing our sadhana bhakti somehow with a more firm uh, enthusiasm to be, and basically regular practice, daily realization, something which we need to do on a regular basis to keep ourselves away from sense gratification, desire of sense gratification, and then actually be stable in bhakti. To be honest, the desire of sense gratification could be even more detrimental than the sense gratification in itself. Some kind of purification in the service of the regular constant devotional service is very important to
Sure.
get over that.
So what did you mean by Prabhu, it goes down, then it comes back up? What does that mean?
Yeah, so basically, well, once you are, how it goes basically is that once we are too firm in our sadhana and we realize that okay, we are doing very good, and the moment we realize that basically, or moment we have with that feeling, then we have a lot of other times. We realize that we have time for a lot of other things, and then not doing and utilizing that time in devotional service, or probably um, somehow getting attracted to watching TV, or probably somehow getting deviated, not utilizing the additional time we have basically in our sadhana bhakti. It impacts the sadhana because Krishna has given us more time to do the bhakti, but now we don't utilize that time. And it goes up and down basically. Some days, so the moment we realize that, we fall in our sadhana bhakti, and then we realize that our rounds are not going very well. I mean, I'm talking with my consideration basically, with my example is that the days are very good. The moment we get proud of that, the days are good, basically, we realize that days are good, basically, not giving gratitude to Krishna. Immediately we fall down. And then again, we try to take step by step and to build to that level. And then it goes up basically. So these are the hindrances, many hindrances that
Yeah.
Krishna teaches us basically. And then the moment we are with this teachings, we imbibe what we need to do basically, and then we start then the realization comes. The more we realize, uh, the better we go in our sadhana. But that's not where it ends. Basically, there are lot to realization, and we are just picking up even not even sand in the ocean of bhakti. Basically, in the shore of ocean of bhakti, there are a lot of realizations, and we need to accept the realization that since we are in material body, we are conditioned. Like Guru Maharaj says that when we are in hospital, we go to hospital, we can't expect people to be all good, all perfect. So we are going to see some kind of um, like ups and downs in people's life, and that include us basically as well. So we need to accept. First thing we need to do that it's okay to feel low. It's okay to go low in sadhana. I mean, it happens, but we shouldn't be staying in that level. We should we should immediately realize that something is going wrong and immediately work to improve sadhana bhakti, to improve our bhakti, devotional service, uh, to make sure that we are again away from the sense gratification, not giving time to sense gratification, rather than utilizing somehow or other that time in bhakti. If nothing can be done, just a YouTube, playing a Bhagavatam story on YouTube or a lecture on YouTube while we are doing anything is also Shravanam, and that can be done anytime, and we should try to do that basically. That helps a lot. The next day chanting I do basically after hearing the pastimes, it is so strong that actually the chanting basically when I call out for Krishna improves. So that's one way of doing it. There might be other ways of doing it as well, and that's what we need to realize, and that's how we need to find out our path of bhakti. Um, if not completely, self complete surrender, at least to start with the Shravanam, whatever we like, that could be easy to achieve, and we should try to do it. It's easy to do in lockdown time when we are away from
Thank you.
the office.
Yeah, very good points, Prabhu. I really like what you're saying. Thing is, each of us are on different levels, and then whichever level you are on, we should scrutinize it. Okay, somebody could be just a beginner. They should scrutinize that. Am I going to the temple regularly? And then somebody who is regular at the temple then should think, am I chanting properly? And the one who's chanting properly, at least trying to chant properly, then you should think, am I causing Vaishnava Aparadha? So each of us are on different levels. And that doesn't mean that you've got there, that you reach your destination. We're still working, trying to improve each of our stages. There's always room for improvement. So yeah, that's very good. And I like that point about how sometimes we can sort of imbalance the time that we give to our sadhana, our bhakti, and you can, it's like a tug of war between our bhakti and material life because we're grastas, and sometimes material life wins, and sometimes our spiritual life wins, and at least we should try and strike a balance, but eventually it should be more the spiritual life side should win more than material life. Brilliant. So thank you so much, Prabhu. It's very good. Uh,
Thank you.
uh, Mankatwari Prabhu, any comments?
Hari Bol Prabhuji, very nice class. All I can say, it's like you never satisfy. Your heart and mind always want something. You
Yes.
have to control some point somewhere. It's like if you give up something for Krishna, Krishna help you to control these things.
Yes.
And that's all I can say. Sorry, that's it.
Oh, that's very good, Prabhu. That's excellent, excellent. Ami Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you. Yes, very, very beautiful class. What I was thinking is what the point you had said earlier in the class is that to actually get over this sense gratification and this very this lust enemy, we need to be cultivating Brahminical qualities and trying to always be in the mode of goodness. So if we can try and transcend the mode of goodness, then we'll we'll slowly try and get free of the sense enjoyment, and eventually then obviously ultimately engaging in devotional service, and Krishna will protect us. So it's like so interesting how in the story the king enjoyed for so many years before he understood what his kind of spiritual position was and what that he eventually needed to serve the Lord. So it's very interesting. But if we can try and stay in the mode of goodness and kind of cultivate those qualities, then hopefully we will be in a safer position. So that's my realization. Thank you. Haribol.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Jay Prabhu, you have any questions or anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to repeat what you said, really. I mean, sense enjoyment binds us to this material world, keeps us, bring us back. I mean, if you decide to enjoy your senses, you'll have to suffer. I think there's a verse in the Gita, what appears nectar at first, in the end is poison, and what appears poison at first is, in the end, ends up as nectar. So, yeah, that's it, really.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's absolutely right, bro. So what we enjoy now is detrimental to us. But what we find now that what we find difficult or uphill struggle to maintain, like a sadhana bhakti, will be nectar later on in life. That's in the mode. That's why we are trying to be in the mode of goodness. That's mode of goodness, and we try to achieve the mode of pure goodness. So which will be the platform for our bhakti. Brilliant. Thank you. अपने रुक्मणी माता जी आई दे माता जी
Yes, I'm here.
हाँ जी
I just missed 15 minutes in the beginning about Yayati. I
Yes.
just want to know from which should I collect, which book, from which book is this?
It's
Is
from
this a Mahabharat, Bhagavatam?
Bhagavatam माता जी yeah Bhagavatam
Bhagavatam, which canto and which number of the
canto 9 माता जी
canto 9 and canto 9 and chapter
18
18? Okay.
okay okay
Thank you, Babuji. I
Thank you.
missed 15 minutes.
Sureshi माता जी Sureshi माता जी इधर Sureshi माता जी हरि बोल
Haribol.
हाँ जी हरि बोल माता जी could you just unmute could you unmute माता जी माता जी could you unmute Mataji, are you able to unmute yourself? I think, okay, Mataji's on now. Okay, Mataji.
Okay. When King Ayati, just adding to the story, when King Ayati asked Yadu to exchange the youth, well, he thought about it. In a way, he was right. He said because they said there's 4 purusharth in the life, that 4 principles: religion, economic development, sense gratification, and then you get liberation. And he thought his father had, he enjoyed his life. I haven't done anything, so I have to enjoy myself and sense gratification, and before I can get the liberation. That's what he thought. And he said, if I haven't, then I won't get liberated. And on the other hand, Puru, he thought that it is his duty, because when we are born, we are in debt of our fathers, forefathers, rishis, guru, teachers. We are indebted. So he thought, I'm indebted to my father. It is my duty to do what he says. So he done that. That's why they both had different opinion, but they were different. They were right in different ways.
Yes,
So that's how he gave his, and he didn't give his because he was right as well in a way. Adu was right, he wasn't wrong, because he wanted to fulfill all his things before he get liberated, and he was thinking the other way that it's his duty, he's indebted to his father. And the Sukracharya, he was a very powerful mystic. He's spiritual master of the demon, like Brihaspati is a spiritual master of the demigods. But that got mystic powers, they're very powerful, but they get into temper very quickly and they curse. I mean, there's a story about Brihaspati. One day he went to Indra's abode, and Indra was so busy in sense gratification and dancing and all these things, he didn't take no notice of Brihaspati. He could have cursed him, but he didn't curse, he walked away. And then by disobeying the spiritual master, Indra had to suffer. So that's the difference between mystic yogis and the devotees of Vaishnavas, Supreme Personality of Godhead.
absolutely. Wow, wonderful. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so we'll leave the class. We'll do some chanting now. Let's do a couple of rounds. So just let you know about next Friday. We're going to do the rulership, the reign of King Ranti Dev. So it's a very different story, but very interesting story as well. We'll discuss that. And on Sunday, we got His Holiness Bhakti Prabhav Swami, and we're talking about the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. That should be really good. So, any questions, please think in your head now about Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we can ask on Sunday, because Maharaj is very, very good on these topics. So, right, so let's do a couple of rounds. Swashi Mataji, would you like to lead, please?
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravana Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschata Desatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaura Bhakta Binda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare